In this lecture, we will discuss what makes an argument good or bad. We will discuss the terms valid and invalid, strong and weak when applied to arguments, sound and unsound, and cogent and uncogent. We will learn in what cases we should use which term and what these terms mean. Let's start with validity and invalidity. So a valid argument is one having the form such that it is impossible that all of its premises are true and its conclusion false. Conversely, an invalid argument is one having the form such that it is possible that all of its premises are true and still the conclusion is false. So we understand that valid arguments, that's a good thing, and invalid arguments, not so much. But there actually is a way in which an invalid argument can still be a good argument. Actually all non-deductive arguments are technically invalid, since by definition it is possible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false, but they can still present a strong argument. So a strong argument, then, is a technically invalid argument in which it is likely that the conclusion is true, given that the premises are true. Whereas a weak argument is an invalid argument in which it is not likely that the conclusion is true, given the truth of the premises. So how we're going to use these terms is we will reserve valid and invalid as terms that refer to deductive arguments only. And instead of saying that non-deductive arguments are invalid, we're going to ask whether they are strong or weak, because to hold them to the standard of validity is to hold them to a standard that they weren't intended to fulfill. Non-deductive arguments are only meant to show that their conclusion is likely given the truth of its premises. So to say it's possible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false is, yeah, that is the case, but that's not a standard they were intended to fulfill, so we don't want to hold them to that. So to reiterate, valid and invalid will refer to deductive arguments, whereas strong and weak will refer to non-deductive arguments. Then we have the terms of soundness and cogency. So an argument is sound if and only if it is valid and has all true premises. An argument will be unsound if and only if it is either invalid or has one or more premises. So if you find an argument that is valid and it has all true premises in our world, then it's a sound argument. Likewise, if you know an argument is sound, then you know that it is valid and it has all true premises. So you can reason from either direction. That's what the if and only if tells us. And to be unsound, it needs to fail on only one of the criteria. So if an argument is invalid, every invalid argument is an unsound argument. And every argument with at least one false premise is an unsound argument. So they could both be the case or just one. And these will apply only to deductive arguments, because we're talking about validity and invalidity. So we know we're talking about deductive arguments. So we'll have a similar term for the non-deductive arguments, and that is cogency. So a cogent argument will be a strong argument in which all the premises are actually true in our world, and any argument that is either weak or strong but has at least one false premise, then it's uncogent. And here's a special note for when judging the strength of an argument that's a convergent argument, is that you need to assess the cogency or validity of each branch separately. The cogency or the soundness of each branch of the argument separately, because each branch is intended